Institutional Development Plan project at Kadwasu. I welcome Dr. Jesh Katoch, Dr. Students Welfare and Professor Cum Head at this cost, Jammu. So, Dr. Sir, we are very thankful that you have, besides your, I suppose that besides being the Director Student Welfare and the Professor Cum Head, you must be very busy. And on the request of our colleagues, you have spared some of your valuable time for the undergraduate students of this college, so they can have valuable ideas from the experience, from the lifetime experience of your expertise in the parasitology, means particularly regarding the topic today, the management and control strategies against GIT parasitism. Because regarding this, for the students, I can tell you that if we have some external disease, bacterial, viral, which is very well visible, then it's good to treat. But this GI parasitism, sometimes the farmer, they ignore this. And, the farmers, they go on feeding the animals, and besides the proper diet and everything okay, even then the animal body conditions score is not good, and most of the time production is not good, and even the animals, they don't come into heat, like you see most of the cases of the anisters, or even in some of the cases of pit breeding also, we advise this deworming first. So from this, you can have idea that's how much important already we are deficient in feed and fodder. We can't waste our feed and fodder. And the most important thing is the majority of the expenses in the dairy productions are because of feed and fodder. If you feed more, then the cost will be very high. So farming will not be sustainable. So best thing is whatever we feed to animals, that gets utilized at the very appropriate amount. So Dr. Jesh Katoch, we are very happy that our students will learn something from you in today's seminar. So I welcome you again, and I hand over the podium to you. So this all scenario is now yours. You can interact with our students, and I hope that our students, they shall also interact with you, and some of the questions raised during the, if they give the question in the chat box, the co-organizing secretary, Dr. Kirat and Dr. Nirbhay, they shall make it convenient that all the questions they are answered.
Yes.
Over to you, Dr. Sir.
Good afternoon to everybody. It's my honor. I thank Honorable Dean, sir, for saying the importance of this parasitology. I can understand GIT nematode parasitism is important. Particularly as economics is concerned, it is really 70%, as you have told, that it is based on the nutrition, whether it is dairy, whether it is poultry. So that component and proper digestion is not there, and proper absorption is not there due to parasitism. So I'll start with that: management and control strategies against gastrointestinal parasitism, with special emphasis on economic impact. In this context, I will say I have taken helminths, particularly Maine, and one protozoa I have taken, because if you make too lengthy a presentation, nobody like to listen to it. I want to say certain important things. If we see that in trematode side, when we look into it, as I have shown in my slide, Fasciola, Amphistome, Cystosoma, and Dictyostelium, which are more important as Himachal, Punjab, Northwestern Himalayas are concerned. And if we see the nematodes, which we found in Abomasum, particularly Himancus, Ostratagia, Trichostrongylis, Myocystocerus, and when nematode of intestine are concerned, Bunostomum, Trichostrongylis, Nematodurus, Chebertia, Gagaria. But Toxocara vitulorum is important in large ruminants. Cystodes, Monigia, Stylacia, and Avitlina, and Protozoa I have taken Eimeria. This is the basic concept I am saying. I'll go with it with each of this group. I'll be dealing with. When we look about the management, if any dairy farm or any poultry farm or any farm, if you want to assume, the breeding is first part, breeding management. Generally, we don't give much weightage to the breeding. Then comes the feeding management. whether the animals are stall fed or on open grazing system, you have to add nutritional interventions. Then pasture oblique grazing management. It is much more common in hills in northwestern Himalayas. But if they are in plains, if they are stall fed, then pasture grazing is very little. When control is concerned, chemical and biological control and its time of intervention is very important when we consider it. So I go one by one. First, I will take the trematode Fasciola gigantea, because I have taken Fasciola gigantea because 1200 meter sea level, we only find this particular, below that level, we find Fasciola gigantea. So very few reports are there of Fasciola hepatica in our country. That is from Kashmir. So Fasciola gigantea is very common in plains of India, and it is common in Punjab, Jammu. As you know, this parasite is found in liver, and it is estimated that worldwide losses are 3 billion per annum because of this parasite. And humans, 17 million are infected with Fasciola. Remember that whatever parasite I have taken, they have zoonotic potential also. And 180 million are at risk. If we see India, we have cattle 192 million, buffalo 110 million, sheep 75 million, and goat 149 million. Remember that I have given this data because prevalence rate of this parasite in cattle and buffalo is 30 to 80%. So remember that we have around about 300 million cattle and buffalo in total. And out of that, 30 to 80% are positive. So in that case, this disease becomes very much important. And as you know, this liver is involved. Loss in poor carcass quality, liver is rejected for eating, reduced milk yield, reproductive disorder, and mortality is there. And prevalence of this parasite is 15 to 52%. These are few reports which I have considered. But when we see a particular flock, majority of them are infected with that. If we see this parasite, Fasciola, it is found in liver. That's an important point. And important points when if you want to control any disease, you should know the life cycle of that parasite. You should know the epidemiology, feeding habits of the host, and choice of the drug. You should take a drug which should be effective against the both mature and immature form, because in UG we must know that much which drug is best for that particular parasite. That is very important. This is the life cycle I have shown. I will not give much weightage to it. I have given this life cycle just to say what we can control. Life cycle, if we break the life cycle, we make the control. That is the management part. So either we can treat the definitive host, which is cattle, we can give drugs to it, or we can control the intermediate host, which is snail. And here the snail is Limnia. That is important. If we see the epidemiology of this Fasciola in Jammu and in parts of Punjab, then the epidemiology, if we see that post-monsoon post-monsoon water bodies increases, snail population increases, permanent water bodies are also there which contain this particular intermediate host. Buffaloes are more prone in comparison to cattle. Why I have written this? As you know, water buffalo, we say they sit right in the pond or whatever water body is there, and they take the grass from nearby water body. And this metacercaria of this parasite, right sitting on that grass blade, it is just like a pen dot. Just like a pen dot on your copy, it is the same size metacercaria you can see on the grass blades which are present in and around water bodies. Sheep is more prone, and goat, as you know, they are feeding habit. Goat is browser, and sheep, because they take even tree fodder, they take goats. That's why metacercaria cannot go to that stage. So generally, sheep are more infected in hills, which migrate and come down and feed on the pastures as well as on the grass available on near the water bodies. So if you want to diagnose this parasite, you should know the history of the area, because that is a history. In particular hospital, 10 postmortems were made last 10 years, all came positive for Fasciola, immature stages or mature stages. So you know that history of that area is there for that infection. Presence of snail, you know that snail, you should know which type of snail. Generally in Fasciola, it is a snail Limnia, shank ki tarah hota hai. So I'll show you the photograph later on. And examination of the snail, you can crush the snail on two slides, and you can see the larval stages. They are very clearly visible. Postmortem reports of the area, fecal examination. When you see all these things, you are able to judge. You need not to go for even definitive host, because in definitive host, you see the egg when complete damage of 3 months to the liver has occurred. Because when you get the egg, the parasite is sitting in the bile duct. You should be able to diagnose before that. That is an important point. So you should know the history of the area is important, because immature diagnosis is more important than the mature one. So this is a snail which I have shown you. This snail I have taken from the web only. This snail, if you see, this is a shell of the. I am audible, sir?
You are audible, sir.
Okay. So this is shell of the snail, you know. If you see that, if this type of snail is available in the water bodies nearby, then you can crush this snail between two slides, and you can examine them for the larval stages. The larval stages which I have shown here in the next below that, and you can see that its radia has a lappet that is very clearly visible under microscopes. And if you see the cercaria, then it's a common cercaria. Ventral cerca is located just on the ventral side, because when you compare it with the amphistome, there the ventral cerca will be on the posterior side of the cercaria, and cercaria will have dots. We call it as cercaria pigmentata. If we have histopathological section by chance to examine, and if we see the fasciola in histopathological section, then what is the difference between dicrocilium and fasciola? You will see that fasciola will have spines which are visible in this picture. Slight cuticular spines are visible. So you can detect from that also whether this is a cross section of fasciola or it is of dicrocilium, because dicrocilium do not have cuticular spines. And if you see the egg of fasciola in adult animals, it is yellowish in color. It's very clearly yellow as compared to amphistome is concerned. Now, how it causes the pathogenesis? That is important point. Pathogenesis is important because, as you know, what is the function of liver? Everybody say detoxification. Liver is a powerhouse of the body. Remember that. Liver is a place regulate the glucose metabolism. When we take enough food, glucose converted to glycogen. Slowly, with the passage of time, when the glucose level goes down, this glycogen is converted into glucose, and this in that way it maintains. It produces important plasma protein, as you remember, that is albumin. What is the ratio between albumin and globulin? It is approximately 1:1.5 or 2. Remember that. So liver is responsible for production of proteins. When proteins are not produced because of damage due to fasciola, as you know, fasciola migrate in the liver parenchyma. When it migrates in the liver parenchyma, its size is very small. Slowly it increases in size, and it migrates for around about 9 to 11 weeks, and 12th week it enters into the bile duct. Remember that this damage, when it causes to liver, in acute cases, if you see the postmortems, complete liver will be ruptured. You will find only pieces and blood tinge peritoneal fluid, and you can find their immature stages. That occurs rarely. We have a chronic form which is very common in our cattle, which is very common in our small ruminants. In that case, if you see that this parasite will make a migratory tract, and this migratory tract will fibrosis will occur slowly. Collagen will be laid, and after around about 12 to 20 week, this fibrous band, they come into existence. These fibratory tracts, which has formed due to parasite, which has changed the architecture of liver, is being replaced. Hepatic plates are straightened by the fibrous band, which take place due to monolobular fibrosis at 12 to 20 week of infection. Remember that. And it is much more visible in the ventral lobe of the liver, if you see during postmortems. So remember that when albumins are not produced or other proteins are not produced, now what happened? The proteins which are required for production, they will come down to balance it. So initially, albumin level is maintained, but slowly what happens? Slowly albumin level goes down and globulin level increases. So we find, although protein will be reduced, total protein level will be reduced, but globulin will be increased. So remember that this ratio, you have to very much cautious about that place, because once if ratio becomes 1:1, you have to immediately look whether the total albumin has been reduced or globulin has increased. You should be very cautious about it. If albumin is not being produced, then also the ratio will come to 1:1. You can understand some liver damage is occurring there. As you know, it's a very simple. If the movement of larva either through crossover or through portal circulation, it goes to the liver. Remember that. That is important. Liver is the only organ where we get impure blood from these parts, splenic as well as from the intestine. It goes directly to liver where it is filtered down. Bad materials are stopped, and then clean blood is, although oxygenless, but it is thrown into the heart. In that way it works. That's the important point about it, I want to say. So if we want to control this disease, now what is the things you will look for? The one is you can attack onto the intermediate host. If we look into intermediate host, then we can call physical control is there, chemical control is there, and biological control is there. Although this can be done only in the forms. In nature or in pasture where open grazing is there, these are very few methods are there to control the snails. But chemical controls we can use. Physical control in the forms, when we do, we increase the water level, we increase the speed of the water in the water channels, so that these snails are flown out, or we place the nets so that snails are blocked right before the entry into the farm. There are different ways we can do it physically. But when we come to chemical control, it is good. Copper sulfate we can use. These different companies are supplying with different dilutions. That right on that paper you can see what it is. Although I have basic data I have given here. And triethylomorpholin we can use. Cuprous chloride has been used. Niclosamide also has been used successfully to control the snails. When we talk about biological fish, black carp, few reports are there, but I don't think it is so good. Nymph of dragonfly has reduced the snail in water bodies. Predatory pawn is there, water bugs are there, and certain plant extracts are there. But since we don't have forms much, in forms it is very easy to control. But when we have to control this disease in individual animal, then treatment is only the way we can do, and we can feed them the grass in rainy season, particularly from the tree fodder. We should give. Earlier people were giving tree fodder to during rainy seasons to their animals because they had one, and the leftover used to be used as a fuel wood. But now people are not doing that. People are just feeding them right from the grass. If you are taking here from the water bodies, it will damage the host, no doubt, if history of the area is there. So different drugs which are being used, the best one is triclabendazole. That is a drug of choice, 10 to 12 mg per kg body weight. It's very important. Other drugs do work, but some work against mature form, some work against immature, somewhere higher dose you have to give or 3 doses you have to give, then only it can be reduced. So you have to be very clear if you want to control this disease. So if we see the epidemiology in this region in northwestern Himalayas, after rains, that is somewhere July, August, we have a lot of water bodies full of snails, and we can treat these. If we control these snails, it's okay. Otherwise, in definitive host, if history says that infection is very common, then you can treat the animal in October, November for fasciola. That is a basic way, and you should prefer triclabendazole for that at present. That is a drug of choice. So in that way, we can control fasciola. It is having a zoonotic potential. I have told you. In India, we don't examine human samples here, but in Europe, it is expanding like anything. And when we talk about the second important trematodes, that is paramphistomes. Paramphistomes. Amphi means both the ends, stome is there, sucker is there. So that is a name. And the common 6 paramphistomes, which are or amphistome species, which are found in our country in ruminants, are Paramphistomum, Cotylophoron, Gastrothylax, Fischodarius elongatus, and Cobaldi, Carmarius, and Gigantocotyle explanator. Remember that both the ends, they have a sucker. That's the important point. Nature has provided them like that, because where we find this parasite, these adult parasites are found in rumen and reticulum. As you know, where the metacercaria open in the system, it opens in the small intestine. So it has to move against the peristaltic movement of the intestine. It has to go in the opposite direction. Feces is moving backward to the anal region. This is moving in the opposite direction to the stomach region. Because so nature, this is a gross specimen. Just it is like pomegranate seed, like 1 to 2 centimeter size. The first one, Paramphistomum, is bigger, 1 centimeter. Cotylophorus is little smaller than that. Cotylophorus is provided with a genital sucker. Gastrothylax crumanifer is bottle shaped, have a uterus taking right to left turn. And then we take Fischodarius, testis position slightly different as compared to Gastrothylax. Then if we intestinal ceca do not reach up to that. Morphology I don't want to teach. If I go on teaching morphology, you won't like it. So you can see this parasite very common, and ovary is post-testicular in this. And amphistome, this amphistome is very common in the all the animals of Jammu regions which are on irrigated plains, because it's very common. If you see its life cycle, slight difference is there. Here the snail is Indoplan orbis, although limnia also occur. I'm not saying only Indoplan orbis, but Indoplan orbis is common. And as you see, it is very common in rice fields. Local dialect, they call it as Chucky. And I can say in local language, jalebi-like snail it is. So it is very clearly visible, although limnia do act, but main is this. Garrulus is also acting as a vector. But important is Indoplan orbis, which is very common in paddy fields. And if you crush this, again for diagnosis, if you crush this snail in 2 slides in normal saline water, you will see all the stages clearly visible. Here the cercaria will have oral sucker and will have posterior sucker and will have black dots, because of which it is called as cercaria pigmentata. That's an important point. And if we see its radia, in this radia, lappets are absent. Lappets are absent as they were visible in fasciola. So you can clearly differentiate, and snail is also generally different. And third, if you see egg, as egg is concerned, is egg and fasciola egg. If you see common at one platform or under the microscope, if both are lying, actually book says amphistome egg is little bigger in size, but books are generally written by the foreign authors. They compare it with the egg of fasciola hepatica. They never compare it with the fasciola gigantica. If I have seen in my experience, both eggs in length, they appears to be, because we see 2-dimensional picture of the egg, we never see 3-dimensional picture of the egg. If we see the length of the egg, they are approximately the same. Width, if we see, it is slightly, fasciola is little wider as compared to amphistome, and that is blackish grayish color, and that is yellowish color. If that much is sufficient for UG student to understand and differentiate, remember that. And regarding its life cycle is very interesting, because once the immature parasites open in the small intestine, then it has to migrate against the peristalsis. If you have to swim against the flow of the water, where you will swim? If you have to swim against the current, then you will swim on the sides of that river, and wherever you will get tired, you will hold on to the whatever grass or something you get to catch on to it. So that's why they have been provided sucker on both the sides. They somersault and they hold on to the mucosa so strong that their bite reaches up to the muscularis mucosa. And once that much damage is there, every place they bite, this biting way they move on from the small intestine, and that is the way they cause the economic loss, because whole of the small intestine, interior part of the small intestine, is completely hemorrhagic enteritis. You will find there will be oozing of blood. This blood will mix with the green feces, and you will give a brown color. Diarrhea will be thrown out, shooting diarrhea. You have to differentiate from the rinderpest diarrhea. Remember that in cattle. Many times, if you take a tea stainer, chai ki channi, and if you add that feces into it, you will find 1 to 3 mm size these parasites, white and red color parasites, with both the ends, small holes will be there. They are suckers, nothing else. In that way, you can find out. Remember that this is very common in northwestern Himalayas. All animals are suffering. Even horses are suffering in this region with this parasite. And it is causing damage to the small intestine. What is the function of small intestine? Small intestine function is to absorb. It is swollen, so it cannot absorb. So it is diarrhea will be there, and these immature parasites you will see there. And because of that, you will see intermandibular edema is very common. Mortality is also very common. Many a time, 70% of the flock we lose in small ruminants. It's very common, 1 to 90% common in cattle, buffalo, sheep, and goat. And remember that out of the total species, we have many parasite species. We have many parasite species. Many of them are sharing with the wildlife. That is important. So here also intermediate host is found either in rice paddy fields, or it is on the water bodies post rainy seasons. More number of water bodies, more exposure to the animal to this parasite. These are the three main snails which are involved. First snail is more important. Second is also important. Third one is only 1 or 2 species it is found. Otherwise, Indoplana orbis is more important. You should know the history of the area. You should be able to diagnose the immature amphistromasis. Once it settles down in the stomach, it doesn't cause much damage. Remember that. Damage is only when it is migrating, and this migration takes around about 70 days from small intestine to large to ruminant reticulum. I have taken all ruminant reticulum parasites except one. One I have mentioned. That one is I have mentioned on just I have. The last one, Gigantocotyle explanator, that is found in bile ducts of buffalo. Remember that. Rest, all the 6 Fischodarius 2 species, they are found in ruminant reticulum, and they are very common one I have taken, which are found in our Indian cattle and small ruminants. There are exceptions are there, certain other species are there, but these are very common, which I have taken into my slides. Now, economic losses. It is very difficult to calculate economic losses. Paramphistrome causes immense losses because small intestine absorption doesn't occur. So loss of weight is there. Feed conversion ratio is poor. Decrease in milk production, and even animal go weak and weak. Mortality is very common in this case. So if we see immature stages that I was talking, when you crush the snail, here you can see this in first cercaria, it is on the posterior end. Ventral sucker is on the posterior end. So we call it as posterior sucker here. So, and if we see the radial stage, leopards are not there. If you are able to identify this in small in snails, you need not to examine even ruminants. This you can examine right at early stage that our intermediate hosts are positive in this area. So we must take precaution and we must go for treatment immediately. Immature amphistromasis, I have already told you, shooting diarrhea is there, red white color. This specs we are saying intermandibular edema, and local we call it as Gillard in Punjab and Jammu region. And when you see postmortem lesion, localizing nabomism and duodenum, varying degree of inflammation, and immature fluke seated to muscularis mucosa, which I have already said. If we see egg, I have clearly told you this egg is blackish in color as compared to fasciola is concerned, which is yellow in color. And size is approximately both the same. Important symptom is there. And the animal who is infected with the amphistromes, he places his muzzle right on the water body. वो पानी के अंदर ही रखता है अपना muzzle को. So a muzzle is dipped in the water. So that is the symptom. If you are able to keen observer, if you are, and appetite will reduce, no doubt. In parasite, it do happen. If we control intermediate host, as I have told in fasciola, we can go for physical, we can go chemical, we can go biological, and some other snail can be used in that, which are predatory on these snails, Indoplana orbis. So in that way, in this way, we can, the best drug for this is oxyclosanide. Oxyclosanide 15 mg per kg body weight. Sometimes people say that 15 mg causes diarrhea to the animals. So you can reduce the dose if you find that it is if that area it is causing. You can go up to 12 also. Then you can see to the results. Rest I have kept all other drugs just on the slides. Risorental, niclosamide, bithionol, but I will talk only of the drug of choice. That is important. The third important trematode is Schistosoma. Remember that Schistosoma, very few people are able to detect Schistosoma. Why? Because whenever we take the fecal sample right on the slide with a drop of water, immediately this miracidium comes out and eggs collapse. So we don't observe. If you have to go for examination of If you want to look into the slide, if you want to go for cystosoma, you have to look for with the formalin. 10% formalin, you make the slide and then see, because if cystosoma egg is there, it will be fixed. It will not be collapsing and miracidium won't be coming out. So in that way, it is very less reported by the parasitologist, although it is very common in plains of India. It has been reported from Himachal. It has been reported from MP, Chhattisgarh. Everywhere reports are there. Even southern India is reports are there. And snails are same, Indoplan orbis. So if you see Indoplan orbis, and if you see the species which are common in our Indian ruminants, it is Cystosoma indicum, Spindale nasalis, Ornithobilhagia, Dattai, Ornithoturcastanicum. Remember that first three are Cystosoma species where we find Indoplan orbis snail. Indoplan orbis, I have already shown you in amphistomes in that. So if we rupture that snail, we'll find a bifurcated tail, A brevifacate Fucosuchus cercaria. Its tail is bifurcated, but the stem is long, because if it is longifacate, then it is plants, then it is birds cercaria. But if it is trunk is long and bifurcation is small, brevifurcate we call, it is for the cystosoma of the ruminants. Cystosoma indicum, Spindale nasalis. Nasalis is found in nasal veins, which is very common in MP region. It causes a cauliflower-like growth in the cattle, and it is they say reservoir host is buffalo, and because buffalo the damage is less. And these three last Ornithobilhazias, three species were common in buffaloes, have been reported from our country. So if we see cystosoma, it is again have a zoonotic potential. Cystosoma is the second important disease after malaria, as humans are concerned. In human, we don't find this parasite in mesenteric veins. In human, generally we find in urogenital tract, we find it. But in our animals, we find it in mesenteric veins, mesenteric and portal veins. Whereas exception was there, Cystosoma nasalis, which was found in nasal. This was found in nasal region. Remember that when we see that prevalence 0 to 90% in cattle and buffaloes, this I have taken worldwide, and is very common wherever paddy is there. Wherever paddy fields are there, where humans are infected, their animals are infected. It's very common where paddy is being grown. So it is grown in far east region of our country. When we try to move from eastern region towards Malaysia, Indonesia, Japan, this infection is increasing schistosomiasis in humans as well as in animals. So as the paddy is also being grown in Punjab, the infection may be coming up. Economic losses per animals is not available. It is not, but a lot of economic data is available as humans are concerned. Very less data of the animal economic losses are concerned. Remember that economics of animals is difficult in parasitology, because remember that what percent of infections is occurring, what percent of animals are infected, and so we have to go control experiments, and that too with the one worms. In nature, we don't find one parasite, we find 2-3 parasites together. So it is very difficult to calculate this economics impact, but a lot of literature countrywide is available. I have not included that because then the presentation becomes too big if I take all that data. So these parasite causes two losses. One is this, from portal mesenteric veins, the female goes for laying eggs into the submucosa of the intestine. There it lays eggs and in fine vessels and come back. These eggs are provided with a spine on one end. So when intestine peristalsis occurs, this spine cuts the intestine and comes out from the intestine. So acute intestinal syndrome is there. You will find blood hemorrhages on the intestine, and that too 1 to 10 millimeter size. And if you want to see the eggs, just scrap that area, place a cover slip, water over it, and examine the eggs. You can see formalin over it. You can see all the eggs in that. It's very common, and it can be found anywhere from anterior end to posterior end, this acute intestinal syndrome. And once few eggs which are lodged in submucosa which cannot come out, fibrosis occur there. So that fibrosis reduces the motility of the intestine. And similarly, few eggs which move with the reverse flow in the liver, and in liver they cause pseudotubercles, small tubercles, fibrosis followed by fibrosis. So clay pipe type of liver is formed. So in that way, you have to differentiate whether it is due to fasciola or whether it is due to schistosomiasis. If you want to see this parasite in postmortem, you have to do very simple thing. Just hold on the intestine towards the sunlight. Sunlight will show you mesenteric blood vessels. Somewhere you will find 1 to 2 centimeter gaps are there where dark color is there. You tie a thread on the both the sides, take that portion, open in the petri dish, you will find the parasite in copula. So in that way, in postmortems, it is very easily you can collect them. Otherwise, by egg, very few people have done that work over it. Then chronic hepatic syndrome hamper again albumin synthesis. And once albumin is, you know very well that liver produce albumin and other proteins which are carrier for the gland secretion from other part of the body. So if liver is damaged, powerhouse is damaged, everything is damaged. Energy production is reduced. So animal will go weak and weak. So trematode, if we see here, the only slight difference is there. The infective stage is not metacercaria. Infective stage is cercaria, which comes out from the water and which enters through cutaneous route. Either we go to the water body, it will enter in our body, or if animal parasite is there, it goes into the animal parasite, it will go into its blood vessel, it will reach to the mesenteric blood vessel. But if it is other host parasite enter into the human, then it will move into the human and it will cause cercaria dermatitis. So this is the cercaria which you will find in Endoplan orbis. Diagnosis is important. These three are this indicum, spindle, and the other one is nasalis, which is really clearly visible. Diagnosis is very easy if it is concerned, but you have to look into formalin only. This history of the area, presence of intermediate host, stages present in intermediate host, symptoms, postmortem findings, eggs and feces. This is the way you have to do. Now control of intermediate host stages, that is very easy. As in India, we do not follow this actually, and we never go for intermediate host control. We generally treat the animal which is happening actually. But these are the different ways. Larval stages of Echinostome species can be taken, which will control they are predatory on cystosomal stages in the snail. Then you can use microsporidial protozoa, which causes extensive damage to intramolluscan stages of cystosomes. Very few work has been done, but nobody has utilized them in the field. Competition between molluscan species, that is a competition between the snails you can do. Water troughs, as I have told you, that mechanically clean periodically, increase the speed, irrigation channels, avoid fecal contact with the source, fencing of water bodies in pasture forms, and all other methods which I have discussed earlier. Remember that nobody uses all these methods because our farmers are not so rich. They will apply these methods. Only the large farms, dairy farms, will opt for it. Regarding treatment, these are the different medicines which are being used for treatment of schistosomiasis. Remember that Stibofan, we use 7.5 milligram per kg body weight for 6 days. Hycanthon, Leucanthon, Nirotazole, Praziquantel. Nasal schistosomiasis, we use sodium antimony tartrate twice a day for 2 days. It is common in, remember that Chennai also large number of reports are there. From Central India, a lot of report is there. Nasal schistosomiasis also and other schistosomiasis species also. If we talk about the last one of the trematode, that is a small one, hilly region, it's very common in bile duct. It is Dicrocilium dendriticum. It's very simple, if you just dissect the liver and press the liver from both the sides, these fasciola will come out, these dicrocilium will come out, and you can see visibly in the slaughterhouse. It's not a big science. Just give an incision to the liver. If liver is fibrosed of the sheep and goat, it is fibrosed, then you can see that it is a chance of fasciola is very common. And if you still cut it with a knife and press it, fasciola, just big leaves, 7 centimeter, they will come out. Even small dicrocilium will also come out, which is very common here. And when you cut the cattle liver, it will be difficult to cut. In that case, calcification is there in fasciola. So that's the difference, Dicrocilium damage is less as compared to fasciola is concerned. The intermediate host is important here. One is ant and one of these land snail. So land snail is easy to control. Copper sulfate we can use, and ants, reseeding of the pasture, burning of the pasture. Actually, farmers knows that. Why they burn the pasture in hills? They burn the pasture. They say that after that we get a very good growth of the grass. It is not that. Because of that, larval stages dies, and parasite which feed on that, the host which feed on that grasslands becomes very healthy, because pre-parasitic stages are reduced in the pasture. That's the reason. Actually, they didn't know about that. Thus, second important group of the ruminants is tapeworms of ruminants is Monagia exmensa, Benadeni, Stylicia hepatica, Globipunctata, Avatline. Remember that these parasites are commonly found in small intestine. Why we find nematodes, cystodes in small intestine? Because they don't have their own intestine. They have to take the ready-made material which animal has to absorb, is being absorbed by these, जिनका अपना intestine नहीं है, इसलिए उनको human या animal के उस intestine में रहना है, and they want to absorb that material. Remember that. And if you see, you can identify all the three genera in the slaughterhouse. Monigia width is around about 1.6 to 2.6 centimeter. So it is clearly visible. If we see Stylacia and Abitlina, width is 3 millimeter in size. If you place the posterior portion of these parasites, Stylacia have two parauterine organ as shown in the slide. Two black dots are seen. So when you see them in the slaughterhouse, these black dots forms a white dark line basically. So you will find in a translucent 3 mm size, two dark lines are moving. That means it is a Stylacia. If one dark line is moving in the center, then it is Abitlina. In slaughterhouse, you can identify up to general level. You need not to go for the style. Remember that regarding treatment is same. Eggs, you can see it is very common. Tapeworms are quite common in young ones, and the damage is quite good in the young one. Niclosamide is the drug of choice, 75 to 150 milligram per kg body weight. You can give Risorantol, you can give Praziquantel, but the best way is keep the young one separate from the adult one. On pasture, orbited mites, sausage are available. You cannot remove them. So reseeding of pasture, burning of pasture, plowing of pastures, it is not practically possible. Remember that. In northwestern Himalayas, in hills, it is not possible. But still, farmers, they burn the pasture in hills. So when we talk about the nematodes, that is important point. Nematodes, if we see, nematode of ruminants, we have blood-sucking nematodes, that is Haemonchus, which causes marked hemorrhages, Myxostocerus, and Bunostomum. These three, they directly suck blood. Their damage is straightforward. They suck the blood, they cause the anemia, and the animal dies. Whereas the other ones, Gagaria also suck the blood, these one. Anemia, and if you see the mucous membrane, I have shown further in the next slides. And in all the cases, dark color feces will be there because blood will be there mixed with the feces. And if you see the postmortem lesions, organ will be pale. Hydrothorax is very common. Mucosa swollen, covered with small red bite marks. Edema of the dependent part is very common. But if we see other nematodes, that is Ostatagia, that is important. Why? Ostatagia is found in hilly tracts of Himachal, part of Lower Shivaliks, even in Srinagar region, even in higher reaches of Jammu. There we find Ostatagia instead of Haemonchus. This Ostatagia infect the gland, and in gland it will cause multiplication in and around, and it will replace the differentiated cells by undifferentiated cells. And when this occurs, there is an increase in the pH since HCl is not produced by the parietal cells. And when increase in pH is there, pepsinogen produced is not converted into pepsin, interfering with the digestion. Remember that. And breakdown of cellular junctional complexes results in leakage of macromolecules and loss of plasma protein. In this case, when we see the nematode picture, one is taking totally lost that, Ostatagia is infecting gland, the other nematode will hamper the protein absorption or some way or other physical damage to the mucosa of the small intestine. Trichostrongyres and Nematodes is important among them because they form tunneling beneath the epithelium and cause venous atrophy, increasing the permeability of the capillaries and open the junction of epithelial cell accounts for plasma proteins. Remember that mucosal cells produce CCK, and parasitism appears to stimulate CCK. And because of that, there is an increase, it acts on the brain center to depress the appetite. So less feed intake will be very common whenever there is a parasitic infection is there in the small intestine. We will find dark color fishes, blackish greenish diarrhea is followed by yellowish diarrhea in many of these cases. The other important nematodes are Esophagostomum and Chabertia ovina. Remember that Esophagostomum, we call it as nodular worm. And this nodule formation occurs, first time infection goes very simple, but second time when it happens, there is a nodule formation. So Esophagostomum species for small ruminants and large ruminants are specific. Chabertia is again hemorrhage plug feeder, it is there, dark color green. You cannot identify it based on species, on the feces. feces, you will find dark color feces will be there. But when you examine the feces for the eggs, you will be able to see the eggs. And if you want to see the economic losses, remember that field trials have been made, and it is very clearly written in our Salisbury that even if a EPG of 10 is there and it is treated twice in the lactation, we can increase the production by 200 liters. Here I want to say, I have in one of my projects, I have treated 100 animals. In this way I have compared, and we have given parasite control we have done, and our expenditure was only up to 800 rupees. Mineral mixtures and these dewormers, seasonal dewormers, 3 deworming we did. In that, we could increase the milk production up to 400 kg. Remember that, because our animals are on open grazing system here. So there the parasite is not 10 EPG. The EPG is more than 100 to 1000. So in that way, impact was good. We got 400 liter in our data increase in lactation per lactation. We have not even considered 305 days lactation. We have considered only 250 days data we have compared. So in goats also, if you treat that 18% increase, you may find in this. So estimated losses due to treatment in India alone for Haemonchus is around about 103 million. Remember that many dairy farms, small animal ruminants farms are being closed because of this parasite, Haemonchus. About 30%-40% mortality has been reported in lambs due to Haemonchus if no timely treatment with proper anthelmintics is undertaken. You cannot give, if you see one egg, you cannot treat the animal. You should not treat the animal unless the load is good. Remember that. Daily losses have been said by many authors, 30 gram per day loss, body weight gain. Dairy loss is 0.97 kg daily milk in Mexico they have averaged. And average loss of 87 kg they have observed in calf in 1 year in Mexico. So that much loss it causes. So I have just shown you the eggs of strong-eye egg. This egg is common for all them. Whether we are talking about Haemonchus, whether we are talking about Chevrosia, we are talking about Ostratagia, Trichostrongylus, egg will be same. Strong-eye eggs are same. So in fecal sample, you will find these eggs. And these are the stages which develop in the nature. And this larva, which on the right side, last corner, is the larva which is found on the pasture L3, infective stage occurs. And this total life cycle is hardly 20 to 40 days. Remember that only one egg we can differentiate in strong eye, that is Nematodurus, which is double the size of other strong eggs. It is very big as compared to other eggs. And Strongyloides egg is also easily visible because it is little smaller than strong eye, and larva is ready in that to hatch. So that is important about Strongyloides. So you can identify these strong eye, Strongyloides, and even if your sample is old one of 5 to 8 hours, then larva will be inside. You will get confusion whether it is Strongyloides or whether it is strong eyes. So this is a chart which you can see, which you can compare. The left side chart has been given by CSWRI. Remember that. That is the eye mucosa you can see eyelids, and compare with the chart. PCV you can say like that, and you have to go for treatment where it is desired. In this side also I have taken, so you can compare. So whichever chart you can keep with you, for much it is called. Regarding nematodes of ruminant, if you want to control them, that is important point. Sustainable control it should be. It should not be totally on drugs. So you must know the epidemiology of GIT nematodes. You have to have designed the deworming schedule for the region. You should know in which season you get the most infection. For example, when we see strong eye worms, they show 2 peaks in migratory sheep goat of northwestern Himalayas. The first week which we observe is in the late March and early April. Late March, remember that the larva which is lying right onto the pasture, overwinter larva, that overwinter larva will get the first shower, and as the temperature increases, sometimes it is in the late March, sometimes it is in the early April. And remember that small ruminants, our farmers take only one crop. They can take 2 crops, but they take the crop. Maximum lambing and kidding occurs in February in this region. They never take the crop of August, September. They take only one crop, and maximum lambing and kidding occurs in the February. And so periparturient rise is there. As you know, hormone has an impact over the worms. Female worms will not lay the eggs unless it is controlled by, as you know, these hormones, progesterone controls the pregnancy. As it comes to the estrogen, will be a rise in the EPG, and female worm will start laying egg, and that egg level is so high, 20,000 egg per gram of feces will be there. So that larva, plus overwinter larva pasture, is on the ground, which infects the young ones at that time and the other flock or even ruminants. Second peak occurs in July and August. Remember that in July and August, the temperature and humidity is quite conducive for the larva, and more contact is there because this rainfall is there with the water, more translation is there. Even the more rainfall changes the pH, which is conducive for larva development, increases the bacterial, and in high temperature and high humidity, even the host immunity goes down. So these all factors, and you get a lot of green grass to eat these animals, so lot of chances of contact is there, so they get the second chance of infection. So we get two waves of these strongyles, which is very common. So third, we have to treat this wave for either with the fenbendazole or we go for ivermectin. Change the treatment every 2 years and weigh the animal before the treatment. Read the sample very nicely, what drug you are giving, whether it is water soluble, because in flocks generally I have seen people giving with the gun. They put a dose and they feed it. But when you see the medicine which they have added into it, it is not water soluble. Benzimidazoles are not soluble in water. Remember that. So if you have to read the medicine, which treatment you are giving and how you are dosing it. Proper weighing, if you can do, it is very good, whether it is small ruminants, whether it is large ruminants. Treatment of third treatment we give in October, November, December. Generally, November, December we prefer in this region for fasciola or amphistome, because at that time large mature stages are occurring. We are finding large number of eggs are available in the feces. So we want to control the infection for our snails, because snails will not be there. So we are treating our animals, although the damage has occurred by that time. When they are discharging eggs, whether it is amphistomes or whether it is fasciola, when we are observing, we feel very happy. I have seen this egg, but we should understand we are seeing the egg when the damage has occurred. We have not helped the animal in any way. So you should be very clear. If this year you are getting most of the fasciola infection in November, then 3 months earlier you should go for, or 2 months earlier you should have treated the animal. So the damage to the liver should have been reduced. That is the way you should be keen clinician. If we go for pasture control, so in nematodes, morning and evening these larvae come right on the top of the grass blade. As the sun comes up, it goes down onto the grass blade. So grazing time should not be in the morning and evening hours. Rotational grazing, they say that if we graze cattle and sheep, then two parasites we are not able to control. One is Haemonchus, one is Trichostrongylis exi. But rest we are able to control, because rest are host specific. Osteotagia have specific species for cattle, specific species for small ruminants. Same way for Esophagostromum, we have specific species for the cattle, specific species but Haemonchus as well as Trichostrongylis exi, both are the nematode of small of the abomasum. They are very difficult to control. So if you in rainy seasons, if you are having an animal, you should feed tree fodder. That should be preferred, if possible. Then use of nematophagous fungi have been used. These trials have been made. They have been found successful. These fungi are fed orally to the animals. These fungi comes in the feces and then they grow in the feces. Their fungi have they trap the nematode larva in their fungi hyphae. They don't allow larva to translate into the pasture, and even they produce certain material which is cidal for these larvae, which kills this larva. And there are certain medicinal plants in the literature available. If we grow them in the pasture, they kill these larvae. We can use biological methods also. So in that way, a lot of literature is of them. Medicinal plant also have certain. Remember that if you read, animals are very intelligent. Yeah, one example is there. These giraffes of Australia, they feed once on particular tree plant, only once in a season, and that plant leaves has a deworming quality. So these animals also are very intelligent. they feed, they know which is dewormer for them. Remember that you should understand the animal psychology. If whenever you try to feed them, if you feed them with the, I have seen, this is my practical experience. When I was young, I tried to feed this sheep with the feed which was having aflatoxin. I didn't knew, frankly speaking. So animal refused. 2 days they refused. Third day, two of them took the feed, and slowly there was a mortality in the farm and high abortions were there. So in that way, I have learned that animal shows one time it reacts when you feed them wrong thing, but you should be keen observer for that. So you learn with the passage of time. So the drugs which are to be used, benzimidazoles we can use, levamisole we can use, ivermectin, clozental. Remember that when we use benzimidazoles, a lot of benzimidazoles are there, and they prevent glucose uptake of the worm. That is very common. Levamisole causes paralysis, and ivermectin, neuromuscular blockade, flaccid paralysis is caught, and clozental, it causes inhibition of ATP synthesis and it blocks its energy route. So remember that benzimidazoles, if you are 2 years you are feeding benzimidazoles, then go for levamisole. Levamisole at the dose rate of 2.5 mg per kg body weight, it causes, it improves the immunity. And when we are using it at 7.5 milligram per kg body weight, it is acting as a dewormer. Levamisole is very good because levamisole is a drug of choice for lungworms also. Remember that. In lungworms, we go for it. Then comes the ivermectin, is a common. It removes the endo and ectoparasite, as you know, except trematode and cystodes. It removes ecto and endoparasite except trematode and cystodes. Clozental 5 to 10 mg is a long-acting narrow spectrum, and it changes the generic profile of the larva in the pasture. Why I am saying that? If we feed clozental to our ruminants for 1 year, what will happen? It acts on the blood-sucking nematodes. So Haemonchus will be controlled, Myxostocerus will be controlled. All these will be controlled because it's long acting. It doesn't act on the other one, simple nematodes, which are, it is acting only blood feeding nematodes. So clozental changes the larva on the pasture, because in some for 1 year, if we take clozental, the Haemonchus population of the larva will be reduced onto the pastures. That is important point here. Methods to reduce impact of GIT nematodes. Two factors play important role in protection against GIT nematode. Protein availability. Remember that if we feed high protein, then the impact of these worms is reduced. Or if we balance the mineral supply, it has been shown that if we feed cobalt in good quantity, the impact of Haemonchus is reduced. Remember that. If we feed high protein, the impact of GIT nematodes is reduced. Administration of copper oxide wire particles in lamb reduces. These are different ways they have tried to reduce it. Legumes, because certain compounds are there in these legumes which reduces the worm load. Manure management, that is important, because manure will have the eggs, feces will have the eggs, and if manure is properly managed, the dung is managed properly, then the chances of further infection is reduced. Selective breeding, rotation, proper dosing with anthelmintics. Cumulative way we can control. In one way we cannot control. I have told you earlier also, if we feed, see, goat husbandry, we are commonly getting this infection of Haemonchus. My question is why they were not fed on tree feeds. Mulberry is a complete feed for them. Bear, we can use them. Earlier people were using that. Now we are making them to graze. We don't allow them to browse. So if they are grazing, they will get the infection because larval stages are existing on the grass blades. They cannot be on the trees. Remember that. If animal browse, goat should not have much of the infections. That should be the criteria. We must plant fodder trees in the area where we want to go for goat husbandry. So the next important nematode in the ruminants is Toxocara vitulorum. Toxocara vitulorum, as you know, Ascarids, you are well aware with. It is 25 to 30 centimeter, big one, clearly visible, common in calves up to 6 months of age. It is a major cause of the mortality in buffalo calves and pups, dog pups. Toxocara vitulorum, Toxocara canis. Remember that. These are the two important. In buffalo, it causes immense loss. Adults are refractory to intestinal infection. If adult is infected, it doesn't cause much damage to them. It is the immature, young one which are damaged much. and a major mode of transmission is transplacental or transmammary. Remember that either the young one get the infection right through placental route, or it gets the larval stages in the colostrum. And these larvae are migrated, mobilized to reach the fetus. This is total hormonal. Post-pasteurization, the larva migrates through the mammary gland and comes in the milk. This is a rough life cycle I have shown. If you see, then if you want to save calves and if you want to save pups, because pups prized dog, clinician is always worried. So the larval stages of Toxocara vitulorum, Toxocara canis, they move through the colostrum. And infective stages, once they come in the colostrum and they are taken by the host, that is calf here and pups there, it is in the small intestine, it matures. You say that your animal has not gone on to the feed or has not taken plants or anything else, but still how the worms are there in the intestine and how they block the intestine, because they are coming either through placental route or they are coming through mammary route, transmammary route. Once they are in the colostrum, these animals, so generally it is preferred that roundabout, I have written in the further slide, we have to give 2 treatment to control this. And it is a government plan earlier that during dehorning, when the animals were brought to the clinics, we have to treat them for Toxocara vitulorum, particularly buffalo calves. That is important, because if egg is there, in egg L2 is the infected stage or L3 is the infected stage, whatever it is taken by the host, the larva goes into the intestine and then migrate and settles in the various part of the tissues, body tissue. And when the animal, that cattle become pregnant, the larva moves from that place, muscles, and goes into the young calf. First it settles in the stomach and then it goes into the intestine. But if it doesn't go in that way, then what happens after that? Post-pasteurization, majority of the larva from different tissue region goes to the transmammary region and comes to the colostrum and is fed on by the animals. So once the cattle is infected, buffalo is infected or bitch is infected, 3 generations, it's very common the pup will be infected. Once the cattle or bitch is infected, 3 generations it will be transforming these larvae, infective larvae from the tissues to the calf or pups. In that way it works. So cycle is common, that's why I have taken, because people are working on canines also. So if you want, if not controlled in the field, the prevalence can go even up to 100% and mortality rate is as high as 80%. Remember that you don't get the chance, even farmer don't come to you and the animal is no more, because large number of ascarids. I have collected 2 kg ascarid from the small intestine just of 18-day-old calf. Remember that. So in that way you can collect them. It's where, and once this much material is there in the small intestine, it blocks the small intestine. And mud color, foul smelling fishes will be there. Animal will be emaciated. Body coat is very rough. You can far away distance, you can say this is a rough body coat. All the, just see the animal, you will just see the rough body coat. It is a chance of Toxocara vitulorum. And obstruction of the gut followed by death, which is very common. And hot and humid climate is very common, which is our climate. Cold and dry, it is a bit less. Buffaloes, we have a lot, as I have told you in earlier. So in buffaloes, it is one of the major reasons of economic losses, particularly in the calves. Mortality can be 100% also. So because generally we don't have big farms, we keep animal single basis. So in that way, economics cannot be calculated. If we want to diagnose this, if we take the fecal sample of that calf, if adult is existing, you will find these type of eggs. And slowly in these egg, larva will develop. Symptoms are very clear: mud color feces, it will not be feeding, rough body coats, worm. If you give a piperazine and little of this piperazine drug only, if you give, you will get lot of worms expelled in the feces. You can see with the size that these are Toxocara. Remember that tracheal route is not followed when it is through transmammary route. When the calf is getting the infection through transmammary route, we don't find tracheal migration. But if it is getting the egg, infected egg, then it will go through the tracheal route. That is important even in human ascarids. Because if you see the picture at that time in human also, you will find respiratory problem little bit of pneumonia type symptoms, as well as larval is moving out from lungs towards the gut side. And once they settle in the gut, this will reduce, eosinophilia will be there. So in that way, it is very important. So treatment of coughs on 2 occasions, that is 9th to 11th day or 25th day post calving, helps to control this. Remember that. And treatment of adult, that is important, which is coming up. If you treat the buffalo or the bitch with the ivermectin or levamisole, it will eliminate the dormant larva which is sitting in the tissue. That is important. So the last, I go with that, coccidia. Coccidia, as you know, Eimerian species. They are one of the important parasite of small intestine. And this is common in very young animals, whether it is sheep, goat, cattle, buffalo. So I have just taken few of them, which are important. So Eimeria abumensis, bovis, journey, and ellipsoidalis. So I have taken the photograph of Zurni and bovis. They are important. Zurni is important for winter coccidiosis in young ones. So if this type of first one is, both the two, one ova are shown, one is sporulated, one is unsporulated. The first one is unsporulated, the second one is sporulated, and the third picture, a lot of oocysts are shown. This is of Eimeria bovis. Remember that. This is common in cattle in India. In India, we find 9 species in ruminants. Out of that, these 4 are common. Out of that, most pathogenic is Zurni, followed by bovis. When we talk about sheep and goat, I have named, you know, the life cycle. I need not say much about the life cycle. I think I'm just showing the life cycle. It's not so important. You should know the stages which is causing damage. Either it is the gametogonic stages or the second zygont stage, which is formed on the deeper sides. This is causing the damage, and this life cycle doesn't require any intermediate host. Here we find oocysts which fall outside, sporulates in nature, and any other animal or the same animal feed on that particular, again the infection multiplies. And coccidian parasites, very common in small ruminants. That's why we place them separate. These are placed. These are the pictures I have taken from the net only. This all pictures I have taken from the net. I am thankful it is visible there. Although I have my personal collections also, but I am bad in my preparations, slide preparation. I am not good in computers. So I have taken these slides. You can see that blood is oozing out from the calf in the second picture. And you can see how the animal is straining when this coccidian parasite attacks these small ruminants. The drug of choice is sulfonamides. As you know, amprolium nowadays is being preferred. 20 to 25 mg per kg body weight is good. Then monsen lasolocid and nitrofurans. These few of them are being added into the feed. Particular dilutions are there available in the nature market. But in my opinion, it is a managemental problem, basically. If you manage the calf shed properly, this infection chances are very risk. Calf or lamb shed, where you are placing lambs, because wetness should not be there, dryness should be there, because sporulation, even if it is there, sporulation should not occur. So you should not provide humidity. Generally, even in poultry, coccidia cause havocs. Whole of the flock can be lost in a day or two. Remember that. So in that way, that is important. In poultry, generally, they are continuously feeding sulfonamide for first 6 days, then stopping for another 7 days, then feeding again 7 days. So our poultry, broilers, or any other poultry, where we are feeding a lot of anticoccidials, now it is coming available. It is available in the feed mix only. We are feeding this, but it is not good in that way. We must not feed that much of anticoccidial compounds or anthraematic. We should not prefer so much, because they are carcinogenic or they have certain problems, because they are poisons basically. And as you know, that the parasite and the host have co-evolved. When animals were there in wild stage, the parasites were there. When they were domesticated, that was there. So in that way, they have co-evolved. Remember that. So its removal is very difficult. We can just sustainable control we can do. We cannot eradicate complete parasites. Remember that. Even arthropod parasites, they will remain even nuclear warfare is there, because some of their stages are found, they are formed below the soil. So it goes into the soil. So they will remain alive, because they have come 400 million years before man came onto this earth. So these parasites, they have co-evolved with the human beings. So human beings and animals. So certain parasites have adapted so nicely. You won't find, if you see sarcocyst in the muscles, you won't find any body reaction to that cyst. Cyst is available if you dissolve any tissue, tongue tissue, diaphragm, any tissue in papain, if you add and if you dissolve, and if you see this cyst, the way they are being collected, sarcocyst, even muscles, big cysts are available, seen with the naked eyes. Remember that these cysts are visible and they are not being, no inflammatory reaction is shown by the body because they have co-evolved. They have adopted so nice manner. So there is a balance, equilibrium. Once the balance goes down, and remember that overall losses, if I've seen what I have done in my projects, where I have done what, only three things I have done. I have gone for the area specific dewormers. I have taken, because 3 seasons I generally deworm thrice only. As I have told you, 2 times for strong eye, 1 for fasciola or amphistome. And then I feed mineral mixture to those animals. So many animals responded from anistrus to, they came into the heat. Thereafter, we went for insemination, and in few cases, we have gone for hormonal treatment. In that way, we have made, in my projects of DST, I have made many animals pregnant, and even the intercalving period was reduced because area specific mineral mixtures are desired. Our plants are having mineral deficiencies in certain area. In hills particular is very common. So once you know this area is deficient in this particular mineral, so then you have to work upon it. And once that mineral is balanced, so parasite works very nicely with that. Suppose I have told you, if you add cobalt and Haemonchus is there, the damage of the Haemonchus will be very less. If that cobalt is not existing, the damage will be quite high. In that way, it works. So coccidial life cycle photographs. So economic losses, 1 to 5% mortality. 1% is very common. Some literature say 5%, but I have not seen much 5%. We can treat those animals. And it is very difficult to quantify losses. Small intestine is damaged. What is the function of small intestine? Absorption. So absorption is reduced. So body weight will reduce, nutrition will be reduced, and feed conversion will be poor, and increased susceptibility to other diseases will occur. I think everybody will be waiting for this slide. This is an important slide. Thank you. Any questions? I'll be happy to answer. Right, you can unmute everybody. I will request the organizer to unmute and let them ask the questions. I'll be happy to answer.
Much elaborative talk. So I think our students will be benefited a lot. So sir, there are few queries in the chat box. So I will read it for you. 2-3 queries are there.
Yeah.
So first is what is the source of information for a particular parasites of an area?
What is
the source of information for a particular parasites of area? Okay.
It is available because a national program for this All India coordinated project is there for GIT nematode control. So in that, India is divided into.
These are the epidemiological surveys basically which we have done.
Epidemiological survey, All India coordinated project. We have that data available on the net and on ICR site, and regions have been divided on that basis in countrywide. So our is Northwestern Himalayas, part of Punjab also comes into it. So here we are telling that we have to go for 3 dewormers, 2 for strong eyes and 1 for fasciola / amphistome. Plains we find amphistomes, in hilly region we find fasciola, much more common.
Sir, there is one more query regarding, you were telling, I think this is pertaining to fasciolosis and the buffaloes. How predisposition of buffalo is established, as buffalo tends to wallow in water mainly in the summer season, but not in the cold months after monsoon?
I'm talking about, because it is in July, August, I'm talking about. So I have told you, we are getting eggs in October, November, December, I have told. Then we are treating only adult infection. That is
basically depends upon, sir, might be the course of the disease, and sometimes these are actually land snails also, so they may survive these.
No, they mainly get the infection in July, August. 3 months they have to roam in liver, no?
Yes, sir. So it is basically in the course of the disease.
Yeah, that is a coercive period. After 12th week, they enter into the bile duct, and then they
Bile
start
duct, yes.
laying eggs. So you get eggs much more common in October, November, December. But infection is right. You got 3 months earlier. That time the animals are on grazing, and green grass is lush pastures are there. Water bodies are full of water, and snails also. Snail also have a quality. They also go for what is a uh, resting
Sleep,
period. The exact
estivation
word.
or hibernation.
Yeah,
Two
yeah,
periods are there.
hibernation. The
So in
correct
the
word is
Shola, actually,
hibernation.
there are spring cycle and hot cycle is there.
Yeah.
So
There is another
basically, we
important
teach
point I
this
want to
in
say here.
PG.
The point which I was giving to my PhD research student. Actually, we are getting amphistomi infection from April, May, when even water bodies are not there. May we are starting getting it. So then we have gone to the literature. We have found that few of the amphistome, they go on the dormant stage in the host, but they start laying eggs in around what May, June. Whereas maximum amphistome infection we found in last 3 months only, as in fasciola. But in when snails are coming up, that time even definitive hosts are positive. So that was the problem which I have given to my PhD student. From Cercaria, she has to identify which species is in hibernation and which species do not follow the hibernation in amphistomes.
Sir, one more query is there. Do we believe that the underperformance of crossbred or HF cows in India is mainly due to parasitism besides that of poor feed supply and other reason? And as per from your experience, what do you think about the ranking of the parasitism in terms of the underperformance and
See,
something about the natural resistance of indigenous breeds?
yeah, both are augmenting each other basically in that case. I can say, if we give good feed also, if parasite is there, the impact will you will not get. And vice
Yes,
versa,
sir.
if protein is less in your feed, the impact of the parasite damage will be more stronger. So if you consider in that way, if the animals are stall fed, the chances of parasitic infection are less.
Yes,
If
sir.
the animal is in open grazing system, then the chances of infection are more common for the parasites. So in stall fed, it can be reduced. You can give good quality nutrition, and you can regular fecal examination can be done. A simple thing is there. If you make a small channel around the dairy farm, then tick stages will not go, larva will not go, GIT nematode larva will not go. If you are feeding them there only, stall feeding is there, they won't get the metacercaria. If you are feeding from tree fodder
Yes.
and feed, remember that when Jammu is considered, we require 2 lakh metric ton of fodder. We have only 1 lakh metric ton fodder. So we are lacking in 1 lakh metric ton fodder. Out of that, 35 is green here available and 65 is dry. So remember that dry feeding, we are not going for fodder cultivation in this region, because generally farmers very less they go for fodder cultivation. Now it has coming up, people who are having dairy farms, they are placing fodder for them. So in that way, my opinion is that in rainy season we must feed them with the fodder should be available, made available from the tree fodders, particularly mulberry is complete feed, which I have observed in large animals.
Okay, sir.
Mulberry is highly nutritious.
And
Monosalva.
I think this might be a question from some PG student.
Yeah.
So when we are going for a trial by targeting a particular group of GI parasites in
Yeah.
relation to production, progress, and economic impact by evaluating broad spectrum and Helmintic, how can we conclude the actual impact of trial on that particular group?
As the people in nutrition they do, in nutrition they don't
Yes,
allow
sir.
their animal to graze. They feed
Yes.
on the boiled, and in small ruminants they place them on the tabletop is there, and the cage is there. They
Table
calculate
of close confinement and stall feeding,
for single worm
controlled
infection.
feeding also.
Yeah, there you can, yeah, even these trials can be done. You can use 2 parasite together. You can use 1 parasite together, individually one parasite in one group. In another group, 2 parasite together, which are common in that area. You can see the impact on body weight. You can see the parameter on blood parameters. You can see evaluate on that basis. Because if the parasite is infecting liver, your protein will be less. Remember that. Under any protein, तभी होता है ना. And whenever you hold on to the sheep, which has parasitic infection, particularly fasciola, the wool will come into your hand. Wool fall in patches. Why? Because wool at that particular junction, when liver was damaged, was weak. Amino acid was working here, compensating at liver, basically. All parameters are like that. These very clearly depend. Why edema we find? Protein is less, edema will be there. It will be on intermandibular region or it will be pot belly. And very clearly you can visualize that. You don't require specialization for that. This region, intermandibular region, Gillard जो बोलते हैं हम लोग local भाषा में, so that Gillard is very clearly visible, and it is due to protein deficiency, as you know very well, because liver function is albumin production, and albumin is the main protein of the serum, and other protein carrier proteins of glands are produced in liver. It is a mainly liver. My opinion, two-way damage is there by parasites, either by blood anemia or by through protein gastroenteropathy. Two are the major way.
So this one is very good question. So we are talking about change of dewormers regularly. So what should be our approach in such selection? So this one is a very good question, actually.
Yeah, I told you that if we take in between one drug, I told you, long-acting narrow spectrum, Closantel.
Yes, yes, sir.
If we take 1 year that in between, then the blood-sucking nematodes are reduced. Their load on the pasture of those larvae is reduced. So next 1 year, we won't get much of the infection of Haemonchus and so-called as Trichostrongylis exile. For that, it works very well, this particular drug. But it doesn't work for other drugs, other nematodes very well. So selection should be very thorough, what infection we are having and what we have to go for. So if you continuously you are giving the same drug, underdosing, overdosing, resistance is a common phenomena which is we are observing.
Resistance is a very sir, there is one last question. Are there any reports of any natural resistance in the indigenous breeds for the parasitic conditions, particularly GI parasites?
As I told you, in different routes they have co-evolved. Suppose migratory tract, if sheep is from here, Kathua, Bani, Banihal, and Doda. So that particular route, that sheep and Haemonchus has co-evolved. So the damage of the Haemonchus is less in those animals. When we add crossbred is in that region, those crossbreds, when crossing is there, the young one comes out, it suffers a lot. It suffers a lot. Because the track because they are co-evolved with the passage of time, as I have told you in parasite, because they are co-evolved in that. So whenever we introduce new blood, new blood, I'm interested, new breeding techniques are added, or some other infection has come to that route, if wildlife has been spread to that region, then chances of stages, particularly amphistroma, I have taken 60 to 75% sharing with the wildlife it is.
Sir, regarding this question which we were talking about, that change of dewormers and our approaches for their selection. So how it implies particularly for the newly born ones, means whether pups, calves or kids. So what should be our approach?
Young one, generally, if we are talking about dairy animals, we have to go for piperazine for this particular Toxocara. That is very clear. Anticoccidial, if you are keeping young and old together, then young are going to suffer. And if management is not proper, as I've told you, what humidity is there, and if they are not placed clean, then chances of infections are there. So young and old are to be kept separate. That is the first. And weaning period, you should be very cautious. Weaning is the most important phase, when its immunity is coming up, but it has not developed to the extent, and parasite attacks a lot. Maximum mortality I have found in weaned animals, particularly sheep, goat, round about 3-4 months they are doing it. So that time maximum mortality occurs. So that time you have to be very cautious that your animals are not exposed to this type of things. If that 1 month, 2 months, if you are able to control, you can control them. And selection of drug, if, as per the records of the farm or the records you are keeping with you, this year we have given fenbendazole. Then next year also we have given fenbendazole. Then the third year we should go for levamisole. Then if you find that Haemonchus is existing more, then you go for Closantel. If you find that more, then go for ivermectin. But you cannot go on single drug for pretty long period because you have to rotate them. And you can
To
sustainably
prevent
give a
the development of enteromental resistance, because we can delay it, but
Yeah.
we cannot stop it.
Yeah.
Okay, so thank you very much, sir, for your elaborative talk. And I think our students have learned a lot, and they will now come of the idea that whole of the parasitology can be killed by albendazole. So that's not the
No, no, no.
scenario.
All
For
cannot be
fasciola, amphistome, and even schistosome, who are nematodes, the drug of choice are variable. And
Yeah.
to talk about nematodes and cestode, and then protozoa and arthropods. So this is, though this is the neglected subject, but it is very important when they will go to field. So they will come to know that the parasitology is the number one branch, and the problems faced by the farmers, especially in our area regarding tick resistance, so they are causing havoc. So I
It's very
think
simple,
they
you know.
have learned a lot from you, sir.
In tick resistance, they work only
Thank you
for.
very much, sir, for
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Good day.
thank you very much, sir, for your valuable time. If you want to say, sir, you can conclude, sir. No issues.
I'm saying,
You were saying something
yeah,
about the
I was saying
parasites.
about ticks. No, but generally our doctors they place the chemical and they want to see that tick is controlled. The larval stages they never try to control. Female ticks she is available in the cow shed only. And
Our emphasis is mainly on the animal, but never off the animal.
of the
But
animal.
parasitology tells us to focus more off the animal as compared to on the animal, because
Just
though
place
it is
dry glass on the cow shed,
seeing
huh?
and believing, so
Yeah.
no, so though because it is concept of seeing and believing, but in parasitology this is not the issue. Here unseen are more than the seen ones.
Yeah. If you just place dry glass over the cow shed and just burn it, the larval stages
Yes, sir.
dies. The female colony dies there only.
Yes, sir.
And it's a
Yes,
very
sir.
simple way. So then you get the
Yes.
infection reinfection after 2 or 3 months.
Okay,
Okay, dear.
thank you so much, sir,
Thank you.
for your informative talk, and I thank you once again
I hope you
for
might have
your
enjoyed.
precious time.
Thank you.
Okay,
Thank you,
thank you,
dear.
sir.
Okay, bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Okay, sir. Bye, sir. Take care, sir. Okay.